And that's why you don't put Twinkie on your pizza.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I just realized?
Oh.
Not just realized. You know what I realized lately is that we are at 74 episodes and we stopped saying our names like maybe 10 or 12 episodes ago.
Mm-hmm.
So people that are just coming to the podcast are like, who is
Who are
this
these
guy?
people?
Who is the other one? What's the name? So Walter here.
Gustavo here.
We are
Present.
Barbatos
Present.
present and accounted for. And summer is in full swing.
Yeah.
And you just went on a pilgrimage with your family, right?
It turned into a pilgrimage. Well, let me see why it became a pilgrimage. There are a bunch of churches in New Mexico where we were.
Uh-huh.
The reason that I wanted to go to New Mexico is because I had seen an episode of Real Life Catholic with Chris Stefanik. Have you
Mm-hmm.
seen that show?
Yeah, some of them.
Mm-hmm.
He features
So
people
well,
or
he has like
places.
another series now.
Okay.
Because he did like 2 seasons of Real Life Catholic, kind of like as a, I don't want to say like reality show, but yeah, he would go to different places around the country or the world,
Mm-hmm.
and he would talk to real life Catholics and kind of like find out and live the custom. Your typical kind of like Discovery Channel type of travel reality show. You know what I mean?
Okay. Yeah.
And on this one, he went to New Mexico, and I saw that he went to visit the Loretto Chapel and with the stairs, which is amazing. It's really nice. And then there was like another little chapel out, maybe like 35 minutes outside of Santa Fe, where we were staying, in Chimayó, where they have the famous holy dirt. I don't know if you know about that one,
No,
but
what is sounds like
so in
something my kids would play with.
yeah. So in Chimayo, the story goes that missionaries that were like settling in that area and evangelizing,
Mm-hmm.
one of these monks saw like a light coming from the ground near the river down there.
Okay.
And this one night he went to explore it, and he started digging where he saw the light emanating from the dirt. And
Okay.
and then he uncovered like a crucifix with like a black Christ on the crucifix. So he thought, this is very unique,
Yeah.
So he was mystified. So he took the crucifix back to his other brothers, and they placed it in the chapel there. And then in the morning, they saw that it was gone. And then when they went back to the place where they originally found it, it was back there.
It was
So they took
buried
it
again?
back again. It was not buried, but it was like in its original spot.
Okay.
So they went back and they retrieved it again, and they took it back to the chapel. And the following morning, same thing. So by that time, they kind of like caught on that pretty much the crucifix wanted to stay put. So they ended up building a chapel around the crucifix, and the crucifix is present in the chapel still to this day. I don't think it's visible. I think it's kind of like kept hidden,
Mm-hmm.
but it's just such a beautiful place, And so it kind of was a pilgrimage. I was driving distance from Arizona, which was pretty nice.
Uh-huh. Getting away
And
from the heat.
getting away from the heat. It's really, the weather is beautiful up there. We had never gone that far east before, and it kind of like worked out that we saw Santa Fe, which is beautiful. We got to experience these different churches. And I love Santa Fe in New Mexico itself because it's just like riddled in Catholic tradition, which is amazing. Just every street, in Santa Fe, which is pretty much the downtown area. It's beautiful. It's walkable. And right by the Loretto Chapel is the Cathedral of St. Francis of Assisi,
Okay.
which is again another staple and a pretty popular pilgrimage site and tourist site at that, because the church is just beautiful to look at, and they have like a nice reliquarium in there.
Nice.
They have daily mass at that church, um, which it was funny because we were planning to go to daily mass while we were there,
Mhm.
because it was walking distance from the place we were staying, and but they ended up like changing it to another location because they were filming like a series or something there for like Disney or something.
What?
Yeah, so it was so funny because the church looks very ancient, and Santa Fe is old Mexico looking. So the outside of the church has like this little placita kind of thing on the
Placita?
side of it. Yeah, and it has like trees, and it looks very. It doesn't look like the U.S. essentially. So we saw that they had little mercaditos everywhere. Like
Oh,
if you're
really?
going through like a little town
Market.
plaza,
Yeah, yeah.
and like a little town market, and we are like, but they were all taped up. We're like, well, I guess it's not open yet. And they had aguas frescas, and they had pan
Mhm.
dulce, and it looked really good. We're like, I wonder what time they open. So come to find that they were taped up because it was a movie set. So they were
Oh,
filming some type of series or movie for, I think they told us it was for Disney Plus.
weird.
We didn't get to see any of the action or what it was about, but the whole time we were there, it was just taped off, and it was just
Really?
gorgeous to
Do you
look
guys
at
need
the
extras?
church. Yeah, I'm Mexican.
I can eat pan
Yeah,
dulce.
make it look really
Making it real.
convincing too.
Look, look how I'm holding the pan dulce with
Yeah.
my pinky up.
No crumbs. Look, no crumbs.
No crumb. That's also
Yeah.
wait, back up because you said Chimayo and the Holy Dirt, but you said in Santa Fe it was the Loretto Chapel. But talk about the stairs. You didn't touch on
So
them.
this, so the stairs is pretty awesome story too. So the story goes that they had built a chapel there. The sisters, I think, came from Kansas in the late 1800s, and they built a chapel where they had obviously settled and were ministering to people from the community. And this chapel was beautiful, but they neglected to build stairs to the choir loft. And it's I don't know how it happened. There's different versions of how it happened, and so they
So
prayed a novena to Saint Joseph,
okay,
and on the ninth day, this mysterious person just appeared on a donkey from the desert and said that he could build the chapel, the
the
staircase
stairs.
for them.
Okay,
And so the person went in and he secured lumber. They didn't really see where it was. They didn't see him working. By the time he was done, I think it took him about 2, 3 months, I think. And he left. He didn't charge. He didn't nothing. So the sisters went at least to the lumber yard to pay for the materials, and they said no, there's no record of anybody buying, because that type of wood is not even available here. It's a very unique type of wood that doesn't
really?
grow in the region. Yeah, it's pretty wild.
Huh.
So the stairs themselves, it's a pretty unique design because they don't have a center support. It's a spiral staircase. It's built entirely out of wood, no screws, nor nails,
Okay,
just wooden dowels holds it together, and kind of like the architecture of the stairs itself is what holds it together. And they say that when you step on it, it kind of has a bounce. It had a bounce because after several years, they added a railing for safety
okay,
because it was just the stairs. And they have
just
a
the
photo,
steps.
which is, yeah, it's just the steps. Yeah. So later on, they added the railing for added safety because you could just like fall from it
Se ha de
if
haber
you kind
caído
of took a
una
misstep.
hermana
Una monjita, se cayó una monjita y pues.
and to put a
uh,
railing on.
but it's pretty amazing to see it. I mean, it's just like standing there with no center beam for support. It's
We
pretty
have to put
wild.
a picture up on
Yeah.
Instagram of that. That's pretty crazy. So the
Hmm.
theory is that Saint Joseph himself built it, right?
Correct. Yeah.
It's kind of crazy to think that they built a choir loft, but no stairs to get to it.
Hmm.
Like, how does that
Yeah.
happen? I don't know, but
And they were like in a predicament because the space itself is not big. It was not a big chapel.
uh,
I mean, if I'm spitballing, maybe like 25, 30 feet wide by like maybe 100 feet in length. So it's and you put
it's
the
kind of
pews in there,
small, yeah.
and it's pretty tiny, you know. So the stairs themselves, if they would build a regular staircase, it would take up 25% of the room inside of the church.
So a
So the
spiral
spiral
staircase
staircase,
makes
it's
more
just
sense.
perfect. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And then for the Chimayó, you know, the dirt, it's so there's a hole where the crucifix was dug out. That hole is still there, and that's where you can go and collect dirt. And the
Oh, you
dirt,
can collect dirt.
oh yeah, we brought some. So we
Okay.
brought for the whole family. You can have your own container, or they sell like little containers there because it's kind of like a touristy spot too. It helps
Yeah.
the economy of the small town. So that they have gift shops and stuff like that. But it's said to have healing properties, and it's pretty amazing when you walk in. They have crutches that people had left, or
No.
photos that people had been cured. Like baby shoes, they had like a lot of baby shoes. You can't really tell, you know, if people got cured or if people didn't get cured. I mean, there's no record,
Mm,
but there is a lot of stories attributed to Chimayo dirt for
interesting.
people getting cured.
That
But it's
takes the phrase "rub some dirt on it" to a whole other level.
yeah, totally. And they have a pilgrimage from I think they get there on Easter on Good Friday. So
Hmm.
people from all over the place, like going to I don't know, La Basilica de Guadalupe in
Oh,
Mexico
got it,
City.
got it. To Our
You
Lady
know,
of
so
Guadalupe. Yeah.
people to Our Lady of Guadalupe, people as pilgrims go there, some like carrying like big crosses.
Really?
They walk over there, and that's where they end on a Good Friday. They get over 300,000 people a year. So
Wow.
um, it's a pretty well known pilgrimage site, and people from all over the country, not just Santa Fe. Some people get there walking from Albuquerque. That's
What?
crazy. That's like an hour and a half, like an hour drive, or an hour, yeah, 45 minute to an hour drive. So
Well,
that's not nothing, you know. Carrying a cross.
that's insane.
Hmm.
I think I'm gonna have to put it on our family bucket list of pilgrimages to go. And speaking of pilgrimages,
Hmm.
what do you know about Camino de Santiago, the way of Saint James?
I know that I want to walk it before my body stops working, which is kind of getting ahead of me. My back's
Yes.
been hurting for a while now. After that trip, we did a lot of walking that trip.
Nice.
So, but yeah, I know that it's one of the bucket list items for not only Catholics but a lot of people
Yes.
walk the Camino de Santiago, and I came to know about it because of a couple of movies, the
We'll get into it.
documentary,
Don't
yeah,
don't
and like
don't
another
jump the gun.
another movie, but yeah, it's something that I know I want to accomplish before God calls me home.
Nice. Same. I think ever since I had my reversion to the faith, it's one of the things that I had discussed with Otto, my best friend from college,
Hmm.
um, and I think that now that I was digging into the history of it, it's pretty fascinating. So it started in medieval times, not the restaurant, but the ninth century, uh, to the Cathedral of Santiago de Compostela in Galicia, which is in the northwest part of Spain. So the legend says that it the remains of the apostle Saint James the Great, son of Zebedee, brother of Saint John the Evangelist, was buried in Compostela, discovered by a shepherd in the 9th century. Also, a little bit of like context. This is about the time that the southern part of Spain is invaded by the Moors. So that comes a little bit into play. But even though like St. James had died like maybe like 800 years prior to when it was discovered, his body was discovered, because allegedly it was 2 disciples that were led by angels to the spot where St. James was buried. So kind of like, like the holy dirt. It was like this light emanating. This was like 2 disciples led by angels. So when King Alfonso II, who was the ruler of, I don't know if like it was Spain, it was like several different kingdoms, heard of the news, he had a small chapel built in this holy place, and then would later commission a larger temple in order to attract pilgrims from all over the world. So I think at that point in time, it was kind of commonplace to have relics to show to people, so pilgrims would come. So it was kind of a thing to help people with their faith and also attract kind of like holy tourism of sorts, and to bring more Catholics into that part of Europe, in order to, I mean, it had like something to do with like eventually the Moors got expelled from Spain in like the 1400s or something like that. So they were there for like 700 years. But then, like, side note, in the year 40 AD, Saint James was in Zaragoza, or the region that now is Zaragoza, Spain. And do you know about the Church of Our Lady of the Pillar, Nuestra Señora del Pilar?
No.
So Mary appeared to Saint James in the Ebro River. And at that point in time, Mary was still alive, so she was bilocating.
Oh, wow.
And encouraging St. James to continue spreading the gospel through Hispania. I think it would be like the name for the region of like Iberia, I guess. The Peninsula Iberica. Yeah, that makes more sense. So so we have like a marker in history, like at the year 40 AD, where Mary's still alive and then appears in the Ebro River to St. James, and then commands him to build a church in her name in Zaragoza. So I've been there, and it's pretty amazing. There was pre-conversion, so now I'm kind of like kicking myself that I didn't spend more time in that.
Yeah.
I think it's a cathedral. But then there were some bombings, and the image of Our Lady of the Pillar there was unscathed after the bombings.
Gosh.
So yeah, it's pretty cool, and people in Zaragoza are like really proud of El Pilar. And what was the other thing? I think it's like the first church in the world that is dedicated to Mary. Don't quote me on that. So we're gonna need like fact checkers.
Yeah.
So, anyways, St. James was working his way through the Iberian Peninsula, and then ended up dying in the area where Compostela is. And well, the city ended up being named after him, Santiago de Compostela, which Saint Iago James. So in James in Spanish is Santiago, and then in Portuguese, I think it's going to be the same thing. Iago. I haven't really checked like how do you go from James
to Santiago, right?
To Santiago, and I think
I've always wondered that. Yeah.
Yeah, like Diego is also like kind of like a derivative. And that's a very hard word for me to say.
Derivative.
Derivative. Yeah, it comes from. This is like another way of another. But Santiago, James, um, anyways, and Compostela. One of the definitions that I found is it comes from the Latin campus stelle, comp- like a field of stars. Campo Estrellas makes sense. Compostela.
Compostela.
So now the the cathedral that King Alfonso II ordered to have it built started in the year 1078, and that kind of like begins or like marks like the beginning of the golden age for the pilgrimage to Santiago de Compostela around the year 1078. So yeah, so far so good.
Yeah, I always thought that, coming back to the name, I always wondered, it's Saint James. Why don't we call him Jaime, Jaimito?
Right?
I was like, where did Santiago come from? I never knew about it until you told me right now.
Yeah, and then it's not like you say San Santiago. You just say
Exactly.
Santiago Apostles. Like the name would be Tiago.
Yeah.
Tiago. Which I don't know. I think
That's just
Tiago is in
weird.
Portuguese.
Maybe.
But yeah, it's one of those things. Is like, how do you get from one to the? But yeah, and then where does Jaime come from? So then now you have in Spanish, you have Santiago, Jaime, Diego, and I don't know. It's gotta be like another one that is derived from James.
Yeah.
Okay, so the pilgrimage in and of itself started because King Alfonso II wanted to see the site where the body of Saint James the Apostle was buried. So that's the original pilgrimage, and there's like two routes. There's so many routes, but there's two that are like the OG routes: El Camino del Norte, or the north route, which is 820 kilometers or 509 miles for everybody that lives in the U.S. Because I wanted to use just metric, but I'm like, I'm just gonna say miles because people are gonna get upset if I just use the metric system for these. But the Camino del Norte goes through Spain's Basque country. In the north part is like the La Bahía de Vizcaína. I don't know how to say that in English. And it goes through like Cantabria, Asturias, and then it heads towards Galicia and Compostela. So it's 120 kilometers, 109 miles, and that seems like very, very long, but that's one of like the original routes. The second original route is the Camino Primitivo, or the primitive way. That's a little bit shorter. It's 311 kilometers or 183 miles. And this is kind of like the oldest route, or like the original way it's called, because that's the one that Alfonso II would have taken.
Got it.
And it starts in the city of Oviedo, which is kind of like closer to, it's still kind of like northwest Spain, but like San Sebastian, which is in the Basque country where you would start the Camino del Norte. Oviedo is like in between San Sebastian and Compostela.
Got it.
So 311 kilometers, 183 miles. It's like like less than half of the Camino del Norte. But it's not as popular. The one that is the most popular that a lot of people do is Camino Frances, the French way. That one is 790 miles. No, 790 kilometers.
Kilometers. Yeah.
And 490 miles, which is very substantial. It's kind of a little bit less than Camino Norte, but this one starts in the border. It starts in France, actually, like in the border with Spain, between France and
Mm-hmm.
Spain, in Saint Jean Pied de Port in France. And this one goes through Pamplona, Logroño, Burgos, León, and then it heads to into Compostela. And and this route is really famous because when the pilgrimage to Compostela started to get more popular uh,
Mm-hmm.
among the faithful, you can see like routes from all over Europe uh, starting to pop up, like from Poland and Italy and Germany and all of the Catholics from all these other European countries,
Mm-hmm.
starting doing their own pilgrimages. And the point where they would all converge would be Saint John Pied de Port in France. So that's why it became kind of like a famous starting point for people to like begin their Camino there.
Got it.
Um, so it's kind of cool because you are in like in Navarra, in the region of Navarra, and going through the Pyrenees, which is very mountainous. Um, so that part is kind of rough from what I've heard. I've never. I guess we should have prefaced this that neither of us have done El Camino.
Neither of us.
We just
I
have it
got
in our bucket
blisters
list.
just by listening to it. That's brutal. I know it's brutal, but yeah,
That
we
yes.
haven't walked it yet.
So the thing is like, well, okay, you're going through the Pyrenees, and we talked about like three different uh, routes, and they're all breaking down in like different stages. They call them etapas, um, and they usually would have you walk like 22 to 24 kilometers, um, which I don't know how much that is in miles. Let's see, 22 kilometers to miles would be 13.6 miles.
What is that?
So
Like a day
per day. Yeah.
per day?
Yeah. And the cool thing about that is that kind of like the cities or like the little towns that are along the way of the route or the
Mm,
stages, they have albergues, which is kind of like hostels or inns
yeah.
where they just give you a bed for the night. And some of them have food available and things like that. So that's how you like the little towns make a economic gain from it, but also they provide a service, right?
Yeah.
Um, so in order for you to get your Compostela, which is the certificate of completion, guess. Well, you already have the show notes in front of you, so it's not going to be a fun trivia. How many kilometers do you need to walk? So you already did you see it already? You probably read it
Yeah.
already. Okay. Well, for those at home, say a number. Okay, 100 kilometers is the minimum that you need to walk in order to get your certificate, and you get a little passport that you get like stamps on in
Mm-hmm.
every town that you go through. Or 62 miles, 62 miles for so
Yikes.
62 miles.
At least 62 miles.
Yeah. So that's what I
Uh,
was when I was telling Deanna, like now with 4 kids, it's like it's even more difficult for
yeah,
me to
dude.
like to do this. So because let's say that we just do like the minimum 100 kilometers,
Kilometers
and then we do like 22 kilometers a day. That is 5 days at
of
least,
nothing
right?
but walking.
Of
Mm-hmm.
nothing by walking. Um, five
Chip, you
days of
can get a
walking
lot
for
of
the
prayer in, you know.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, so like I've been watching a lot of YouTube videos of people that do like tips and tricks on what to do, and um, it is pretty intense from what I've heard. There's people that do like 36 days uh, for like the Camino Frances to
Yeah,
break down um, 780 kilometers.
yeah. I've
So
heard that it's roughly 40.
yeah,
Um,
well,
if you do the whole thing, 40 days, dude. Can you imagine that?
Well, we know those guys that did 40 days. Let's just get to that in a minute because
Oh my
that was
goodness.
a very extreme example of how to do a Camino. But so one thing that fascinates me about this is that it attracts both religious and non-religious people
Hmm.
to do this. Some people will do it out of devotion, and they just want to deepen their faith. And just like some people would go to the Holy Land, some people would go to, um, Santiago de Compostela. Like so far, like two of the biggest moments for me, or three, I would say, three of the biggest moments that I've had in my faith is going to the tomb of Saint Peter in Saint Peter's Square. Uh, and then adjacent to it, going to the tomb of Saint John Paul II. It's also in Saint Peter's. Praying at the tomb of Saint Francis of Assisi at Assisi, and then praying at the tomb of Saint Mark, the um, the evangelist in Venice.
Mm.
Because you are like, okay, this is like the guy that wrote the gospel that gets proclaimed from the pulpit on Sunday.
Every Sunday, yeah.
It's kind of like being in touch with your roots, so to speak,
Yeah.
from the faith. So going to pay your respects at the tomb of Saint James um, sounds like a really cool uh, way to like have this pilgrimage, deepening of faith, to see what God wants from you. Um,
Hmm.
but as we learned from the 2010 movie The Way, starring Martin Sheen, there's people that do it for other reasons, like
Hmm.
losing weight or quit smoking or become a better writer, like the people in that movie, which you know those are probably fictitious, but some people might have those reasons to walk the Camino.
Or they
Uh,
just do it because they're avid hikers and they want a challenge. It's like a
yeah,
mountain climber would go to Everest, or whatever. So it's yeah. I think it's varied reasons, but they all get in touch with something they weren't expecting if they're not doing it for the typical pilgrimage reason. I think
yeah.
that's what I liked about that movie in 2010. Which, by the way, did you know that Martin Sheen uh, is called Martin Sheen because Archbishop Fulton Sheen?
No, I did not know that. I
Yeah, they
I,
changed.
I do know that he is Catholic, and Emilio
Yeah,
Estevez is Catholic, and I think Emilio Estevez is
directed
in the
that.
movie, right?
He directed it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Um, I
So,
did not
so
know that
that's
he was
just a
named
fun note.
after
Hmm.
Bishop Sheen. That's awesome.
Yeah. So I think they changed their name because when they changed it because there was like a lot of prejudice against Hispanics back then when they first came to the States, and it became a stage name and whatever. But
Hang on,
but
what's
yeah,
his original name?
I think it's Roberto Esteves or something like that.
And then his stage name is Martin Sheen.
Yeah, and then that's
What?
why we have a Charlie Sheen.
Carlos
That,
Sheen. Well,
yeah,
that guy is
his
winning.
name is Carlos Esteves.
Carlos Estevez.
Yeah.
Emilio. That's not why I named my son Emilio. Just so you know, it was
Yeah.
not after Emilio Estevez.
But yeah,
Um,
the movie does a good job of making people connect with something other than themselves. You
something
know,
bigger than themselves.
yeah, exactly. And I liked it. I thought it was a underrated movie, and I saw it in a time of my life where I was getting to know my faith a lot better and being more intentional about it. And a lot of things spoke to me
Uh-huh.
about it. And since I saw that, I was like, that would be amazing to walk.
Yeah, and the cathedral in and of itself is so beautiful. It's kind of like this. I think it's Baroque.
Yeah.
Well, it says that it's in the notes that it was built like in a Romanesque style.
Hmm.
Um, but I was trying to find the name of the Botafumeiro. The Botafumeiro is a giant incense thurible that is like mid 19th century old, and they swing it across the main altar on special occasions, on the pilgrim masses. And just seeing that, if you're listening and you're watching and you haven't seen the Botafumeiro, we'll probably put a link to a video of that, because it's like it's a show, like the kind of like they put on a show, because
Hmm.
this thurible with incense in it, it's probably like the size of a person. So think of a piñata that is like the size of like a human, and they just swinging across the main altar back and forth,
Hmm.
and like the cloud of smoke is like
Yeah,
following. It's kind of insane
that'd be
to
pretty sweet. That'd
think
be
about that.
awesome to witness.
I think they feature that in the movie, right? I
They
don't
do,
remember.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
The ending of the movie, how he is like, well, I don't want to give it away, but there's one thing that I'm like, you shouldn't do that. That's not Catholic.
Hmm.
Actually, they he does it throughout the movie, right? He puts a little bit of ashes in like every little point. I'm like, come on, that's not theologically sound, guys.
Yeah, and I don't think he was doing it for theological reasons. It was more of a, I guess he wanted to connect with more audiences.
Yeah,
But it's fine. I think if you watch it
it's,
with another lens, I think
yeah.
it's still a good movie.
But if you want to watch like a Catholic perspective on El Camino, 2016 Footprints, the path of your life. It actually stars or has in it 10 parishioners from St. Anne here in Gilbert, Arizona.
Hmm.
And they were led by Father Sergio Fita, who
Hmm.
unfortunately he's going back to Spain. He was the pastor of St. Anne for like a number of years, but he
Hmm.
has decided to go back to Spain. Um, this is the what Gustavo was talking about it towards the beginning of the episode, that they walked 1,000 kilometers, 621 miles. I'm just going to say that again so people actually let that sink in. 621 miles in 40 days.
Yeah.
That is not common. That is like two Camino Primitivos, basically.
Hmm.
Um, and I think they take detours, right? Because they go to this other city in Spain to look at the relics of the Holy Cross and
Exactly. Hmm.
pray over that. But they get like all sorts of weather. It's kind of insane.
Yeah, I haven't watched it in a while. I was I have a connection to that movie somewhat because when I did TLI, the Tepeyac Leadership
Uh
Initiative,
huh.
one of the guys that was part of that group was in TLI with me.
Oh,
Shout out
really?
to shout out to Pedro. Pedro's like a really nice guy,
See, we
and
should have interviewed him for this
we
episode.
definitely should, and bring him in and give us his perspective, maybe for like the, I don't know, 8-year anniversary of the movie or something, whatever. But he was yeah, he needed some work done for like the DVD cover and stuff after the release of the movie. So I helped him out with that stuff loosely. I didn't design anything. I just made like small edits on it and helped him out that way. But yeah, he would talk about it, and you would just be like, how did you do it? That is crazy amount of walking. And for anybody that hasn't watched it, I really encourage you, go check it out. Love that they have mass. He says that everybody would carry a different part of the of what is needed to have mass in their
Mm,
backpacks.
yeah.
And it's just a gorgeous movie. I love it. I'm gonna go watch that again.
You know, I was trying to find it on Netflix because it was where it was distributed. at, but I couldn't find it. Today I was trying to watch it before we started recording,
Yeah.
but now I need to figure out whether it is available to
Well, let's
stream it.
check it out.
So if we find out, I guess we can also, like, if we don't find it right now, we can put a link
Yeah.
in the description. But yeah, man, I got me it got me thinking, I guess, because today is July 26th, and this is the day after the feast day of St. James, which is the whole reason why we started talking about this. I
Mm-hmm.
guess we should have opened with that. It's just like, why are these guys talking about El Camino and Chimayó and Santa Fe?
Pilgrimages. You know
Pilgrimages.
what? They have something in Chimayo that reminded me of El Camino.
Mm.
They have the shells
Oh, do they?
all over the different areas. Because I don't know if you remember in Camino they have at
Yeah,
various points. It's what's kind of like guiding you
yeah. It's
through
like
Camino.
the I don't know how to call it, the logo, or like
Yeah,
you
like the emblem
everybody.
of
Yeah,
the pilgrim, right?
yeah. The pilgrim
And
has a shell with the cross in
it's
it
like
or
a red
whatever.
cross, I think it
Yeah,
is. And they have shells like that too at Chimayo, which I was like, I remember seeing this when I watched the movie, so that's
interesting.
pretty sweet. Hmm.
So now I'm like, is there a way to do a virtual Camino? Like you walk the distance from your home, and then you do like a devotion and prayer, but you don't get to. The problem that I have with that, how there's, have you seen how there's like these um challenges that you can log in or like register for, rather, and then you get a medal at the end if you like
Hmm.
log steps or distance
Uh-huh.
for certain things, like their theme, like Lord of the Rings, and then you can walk the distance that the characters walked
Oh,
from the
got
Shire
it.
to Mordor,
Hmm.
and then you get a medal. It says like you walked the distance that the characters were
Got it.
to Mordor. This kind of like fun way to get you more active and do
Hmm.
exercise, but it's not the same, right?
No,
It's
well,
not the same. It wouldn't be the same.
interestingly enough, if you go walking from here to Chimayo, it's around 530 miles. So it's
Dang.
roughly the same distance
Yeah,
for
but
one of
that
the
there are no
pilgrimages.
albergues in the on
There's
the way.
nothing out there, dude. There's just a ton of dirt and a ton of desert and a ton
Yeah,
of nothing.
you
It's a
probably
really
die.
long
So
drive.
don't do that.
Don't do that.
Do not walk from Phoenix to Chimayo. Uh, in Spain? They have the infrastructure for that. So if you want
Yeah.
to do it, check it out. Um, we'll put some links in the description if anybody that is listening wants to um, look into that. And if you have done El Camino before, leave a message, comment.
Yeah.
We would love to know about your experience. And
Yeah. Share a
yeah,
photo on Instagram. That'd be great to see.
yeah, that would be fun. Just tag us and we can reshare it. Um, yeah, closing comments.
No, it's really fun. I think we're trying to do this a lot more to incorporate uh, our faith into our family vacations. So we're trying to source out locations that we can find out and explore churches, monasteries, things like this that give,
Shrines.
yeah, shrines that give the vacation like another level of meaning. Because you can always go and have fun, and that's all. That's great to just have leisure time.
Hmm.
But if we have the opportunity, like we did with this little trip, it just adds like another dimension to the trip, and it also instills in the kids, that this is important to us. This is what we do. We live our faith. We celebrate our faith, and we seek it out when we're on vacation. So
And
that's
it's
pretty
their
cool. I think that's a nice
inheritance.
tradition.
Yeah.
And it's just things like that are like, old. It's just like you're in a time machine.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting to see.
Yeah, that's amazing. So, all right, go on a pilgrimage, whether if it's in Europe or find the closest shrine close to where you live. It's probably one close by, close-ish.
Yeah.
Well, thank you everyone for listening to this episode, and go to direct.me/Barbatos for more information about the podcast. And I guess we'll see you next week. Buen camino to everybody.
Alrighty.
Until the next time.
Talk to you later.
Bye.